Trudeau is giving special government treatment to the admitted criminals that he wants to do business with. You guessed it, today's story is about that crooked Quebec-based company, SNC-Lavalin, and their new special deal with the government. While Trudeau is making possibly hundreds of thousands of innocent Canadians into gun criminals, he's making exemptions in Canadian law for very real criminals to continue to get government contracts. The perennially corrupt, bribing, hooker buying, dictator progeny coddling, liberal darlings over at SNC-Lavalin are still in the running for government work, even after Trudeau was found guilty of ethics violations for his own crooked dealings with SNC-Lavalin and the Attorney General. Today's story comes to us by way of an order paper question from Conservative MP Peter Kent. This is what Kent asked the government. With regard to the impact of SNC-Lavalin's guilty plea in December 2019 on fraud charges, in relation to the company's contract to support servicing of minor warships and auxiliary vessels, what impact will the guilty plea have on the scheduled renewal of the contract? What specific considerations will the government take into account when deciding the status of the renewal? What is the projected timeline for either renewing this contract or awarding a new contract to another company? And D, what changes has the government made to the way it conducts business with SNC-Lavalin following the December 2019 guilty plea? Now, that's a long question, but in short, Kent is asking the government for information on their current dealings with SNC-Lavalin after the company's guilty plea for fraud relating to business dealings in Libya. In December 2019, as part of a plea deal, SNC-Lavalin pleaded guilty to a charge of fraud over $5,000, and they'll pay a $280 million fine, and they'll be subject to a 3-year probation order. Now, here's the story from Global News from back in December when the guilty plea came in. The charges had centered on allegations that the company had paid nearly $48 million to public officials to influence government decisions under the late dictator Muammar Gaddafi's regime between 2001 and 2011. SNC-Lavalin had also faced charges of fraud and corruption for allegedly defrauding various Libyan organizations of roughly $130 million. The plea deal comes on the heels of the conviction of a former top SNC-Lavalin executive last Sunday. On Sunday, a jury found former SNC-Lavalin executive Sami Babawi guilty of paying off foreign officials and pocketing millions as he worked to secure contracts for the Canadian company in Libya. What a bunch of crooks. Now, those were the very charges that Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould was pressured to drop, and she lost her job when she refused. And that whole incident resulted in Trudeau being found guilty of violating Canadian ethics laws for putting that illegal pressure on Jody Wilson-Raybould to make her strike a sweetheart deal to defer prosecution of the criminals at Liberal-linked SNC-Lavalin. Now, that guilty plea to fraud by SNC makes the company technically ineligible to do business with the government. Yet, they somehow have a contract to do warship maintenance with the DND. How did that happen? And what other companies are getting this special treatment from Justin Trudeau? Well, look at this. In the response to the order paper question, as of February 3rd, 2020, PSPC, so that's Public Services and Procurement Canada, has one administrative agreement with a supplier in lieu of suspension under the integrity regime, SNC-Lavalin Group. So let's stop right here. SNC-Lavalin not only got a sweetheart plea deal, only having to plead guilty to one of several counts relating to their corruption, but they got a, quote, administrative agreement, a special agreement allowing them to continue to do business with the government, to continue to enrich themselves, even though the regulations about government contracts say they can't do business with the government. Oh, and they're also the only company in all of Canada getting this special administrative agreement. Now back to the order paper response. For further details, the department maintains a public listing of suppliers with administrative agreements under the integrity regime. Yeah, but it only has one name on it, SNC-Lavalin. The guilty plea had no impact on the scheduled renewal of the in-service support contract for minor warships and auxiliary vessels. The procurement process to establish a replacement in-service support contract for minor warships and auxiliary vessels is progressing as planned on behalf of the Department of National Defence. So now, after everything we know about how crooked SNC-Lavalin is, and after everything we know about the Liberals breaking the rules for SNC-Lavalin, the Liberals are still bending the rules for SNC-Lavalin. Actually, the Liberals have rewritten a rule for SNC-Lavalin and only for SNC-Lavalin. Sure pays to be a friend of the Liberals, doesn't it? For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Unlike the mainstream media, we are not bought and paid for by Justin Trudeau, and that's why we are ferocious in our accountability journalism of Justin Trudeau and his Liberals. We rely on the support of people like you and not the government. Now, if you'd like to continue supporting us and helping us do our job to speak truth to power and to hold the government to account on behalf of the people, you can do that at a special website, helprebelnews.com.